Hey everyone, and welcome to another sketchbook tour. I'm so happy and proud to say that I finished another sketchbook this year. It was one that was sitting around for a while. I'd started it in 2019, I believe, and then I just didn't use it. I didn't paint much for a while, and then I decided to paint a larger sketchbook, which I completed, I think, a couple of months ago. You can see the video here, I'm going to link it here, which was the first sketchbook I ever finished. And then I, this summer, picked up this smaller sized one. It's a moleskin one. Then I again just didn't use it for a while until a month ago or so, when I went to a friend's house. We just had a very chill afternoon, drinking tea, chatting, and I thought, okay, I'm going to take my sketchbook with me, and I completed 4 pages there while chatting with my friends. It was so lovely, and ever since then I was really in a sort of flow, I'd say, and I completed it, which makes me so happy. And yeah, so without further ado, let's get started into the sketchbook tour. Okay, so this is the sketchbook that I use. It's a moleskin sketchbook, and the size is, not quite sure what the size is actually. I'm going to write it on the screen for you to see. And as I said before, I started it in 2019, so the first couple of pages are really just some small sort of sketches. I did some sort of, well, I think that was when I was thinking about opening an Etsy shop, actually, to be honest. I was thinking of doing some sticker sheets and things like that, and so I started to do some designs, which I very quickly gave up on. Obviously, I do not have an Etsy shop or any shop as of now. And so the first couple of pages really are just some ideas and things. This is actually a sort of postcard design that I really like. I'd like to make it a digital version soon, use Procreate and turn it into a postcard. I think it'd be so much easier to do it on, well, Procreate or sort of digitally anyways, for the small details on the houses and small architectural details here. And then I have some more, you know, beginnings of sketches for sticker sheets, and you can't even see anything on here. They're just 3 words: strong, wild and brave. Right, so you can't see anything anyway. Let's turn to the next page, which was supposed to be a Christmas postcard, which I again didn't finish, which is really sad. But I'm currently working on some other designs which I really like, so the idea is still there, and we'll see how that one goes. There is another sort of sticker design here with a sunflower, and this one was going to be La Vie en Rose. And then this is actually one that I quite like. It's tea time. I love tea. I do not drink coffee, but I love tea, like green tea, black tea, white tea, that I recently tried. Is really delicious. Anyway, so I did this little sketch here with teacups and mugs and teapot and all sorts of things that are tea related or tea time related. And then I did this little, let's say, postcard design or whatever, and be nice to yourself, which is really important, obviously. I quite like the colour combination here. The problem, in my opinion, is the shape is kind of weird for the butterfly, but I really like the colour combination, so that is something to keep in mind. I think a sketchbook is also sort of an archive, you know, you sort of experimenting and trying to see what kind of style you like, what your style is, and also what colours you like and what your colour palette is. And then this is a little sketch for actually a YouTube banner that I did before I even started my YouTube channel. So I believe this must have been in 2019, again, something like that, and I started my YouTube channel last year, so 2021. So the idea was there, and I just never, you know, had the courage to try and get started. So finally, this is a page that I did this summer when I picked up the sketchbook again, and you'll see from here on I used a lot of gouache. I really love this medium. So this is the very first page that I did this year. I really like those flowers. They're very loose. These are flowers from our balcony, and I really like how I just, you know, I didn't have a composition of anything in mind. It was just flowers, so that's kind of nice. And then I had some with a frame, which I really like. I like the looseness of it again, and also the background, which is very irregular. You know, you can really see the brush strokes here, but I really do like that actually. And also another very loose flower and ornament sort of sketchbook spread in blue, so very monochromatic one, which is interesting I think, and also inspired by the flowers we have on our balcony. The next page is one which I like and don't like at the same time. I think I really like the colours, but then it's just sort of, let's say, proportions and perspective is kind of weird. Interesting but weird. I was trying to do still life. I really do like still life paintings. I don't do them often enough. I tend to do lots of flowers, as you will see, and as you have probably seen if you know my Instagram account that I'll link in the description box down below. And then I did another sketchbook spread with flowers and little decorations that we have in our balcony this summer, and then I stopped using the sketchbook again. I don't know why really, because it's a lovely size, the quality is so good, and the paper is really smooth and thick enough to be using all sorts of media like gouache or coloured pencils or just mixed media really, which I really like. And then finally, a month ago, like in the middle of October, I took the sketchbook with me to see a friend of mine. We had tea and cake and we just chatted. And so I was like, okay, I can take my sketchbook with me and just doodle. And I surprisingly finished 4 pages during that afternoon, which was super lovely. And I used some photos, and so I did a sketchbook spread with, again, flowers and this little, what's this called? Seestern. Yeah, it's very loose again, and using gouache and coloured pencils. This is also the point where I started to use much more reference pictures and photos. This was also inspired by a photo of a cafe, and they had these beautiful floral ornaments on the wall. And this was also inspired by, well no, actually this was inspired by our tea time at my friend's house. They have beautiful teacups that have beautiful floral ornaments on them, so it really just is a very, I think, cohesive sketchbook spread in my opinion. And next is also inspired by a photo that I had, a very loose landscape painting with gouache and coloured pencils again, which I quite like. It was totally fun, you know, you're supposed to have fun in your sketchbook, so that's very important. Sometimes the outcome is not necessarily what you'd wanted it to be or expected it to be, but that's just fine. And then the next page is what, well, approximately, you know, it's not a one-to-one replication of what the table looked like at my friend's house. I mostly used gouache and coloured pencils, but for this little sketch I wanted to do something very easy and quick, and so decided to go for a fine liner instead. Then I tried, and in my opinion kind of failed to do this bird. The proportions are kind of weird, although I mean it is bird that has a rather long neck and a rather big body in comparison. Yeah, the shape looks kind of weird, but you know, it's fine. I'd really like to actually try and do more birds or animals in general. I really want to improve on that subject. And then the last page that I did during this afternoon was with, I think it's a Pit Artist pen by Faber-Castell that I really like, and just, you know, doing some decorations and things that were at my friend's house. Then the next sketchbook spread that I really like is rather monochromatic. The left side here is just using coloured pencils, and for this page here I used pink ink. It was supposed to be red, but when I used it for the first time it turned out to be very pink, which I really don't mind because pink is one of my favourite colours. And I just did some, you know, very autumnal inspired things like mushrooms and leaves and things like that, and I quite like the results of it. This page is one that I did because I was trying to find and create a pattern to paint a plate, which you can see in my latest vlog. And so I took one of my grandma's headbands that we have now and tried to, you know, see what different colour combinations I can do. And in the end, I decided to go for something slightly different, which you're going to see in a couple of pages. Next is a spread that was inspired by a book that we have at home. I really tried to sort of diversify my subjects and also my sources of inspiration using books and photos and, you know, all sorts of different sources to get inspiration from. And so I have these two little cute seaside landscapes here, and then some apples that I think turned out really lovely. I really like them. And I also like the sketchbook spread together. It's rather harmonious in my opinion. Next is a little frame that is also inspired by my grandma's headband. I never completed this page because I was like, I'm going to ruin it. I was just so scared of making it look ugly. I was thinking of drawing some butterflies in the frame, but I decided against it just because I was afraid to ruin the page, which, you know, is okay. You do not have to complete every single page in your sketchbook, and some things are just left unfinished. That's just what it is. Next one is again flowers. It's my favourite subject. You're going to see lots of flowers in here. And this is inspired by a book we have at home, which is like home decor and stuff. And so I took one of the pages and did this lovely flower vase. I really like the looseness of it. I really like the background, which is a new gouache colour that I bought this summer, and I was really looking forward to trying it out and combine it with other colours that I already have. Next is also a rather unfinished sort of page, but you know, that's okay. I did the very first basic layer of gouache here and never really completed using colored pencils to add details, but I think it's still a lovely page. It's very loose and the colour palette is really lovely in my opinion. You can also see that I was rather impatient at times. You can see that the colours here sort of blurring together, the blue and the yellow centre of the flower, but I think it's actually an interesting effect here, so maybe I can experiment with that a little more. The next one is a page that I really like. Again, was inspired by that home decor book that we have at home. What I really like about it is the colour combination. It's very simple, it's only pink, blue and red, but I really do like the colour combination. Actually just sort of has so much contrast, and it's not too, well, it's rather bold but not too much sort of in your face, if you know what I mean. And I also really like the little frame that I drew around it. I think it adds an interesting detail. The next sketchbook spread is one that I'm very proud of. I did this inspired by a book that I have, which is called Recipes from the Good Old Days. You can see me completing the sketchbook spread in one of my latest videos if you'd like to check that out. Colour combination is rather unusual for me. It's not something that I'd go for normally, like the green and then the sort of peachy background with the lilac mushrooms and the lilac vase here. But I actually really like it. Looking back, I'm very glad I decided to go for this peachy sort of colour for background instead of this more pink coloured one. And then based on this page I did another one that I really like, which is this one where I added butterflies to make it a little more interesting, and I think it turned out lovely. Again, this is gouache and coloured pencils. This is what I used most of the time. The next page is also one that I really like. Honestly, I'm really happy how this sketchbook turned out, even though I had it sitting around for quite a while and didn't use it for basically ages. I'm really happy that I picked it up again. It's such a lovely size and you can complete a sketchbook spread rather quickly, which is nice too, because using larger sized sketchbooks gives you lots of freedom, but then at the same time you can be overwhelmed, you know, by this huge blank space in front of you. And so this is a still life that I did inspired by the things that we have at home. This is actually a vase from my great grandfather that we inherited, and I really like the ornaments on here and the colour combinations, and this little mug here, this little cup. Next one is one that I do not particularly like, but I think it's interesting to experiment and see what happens when you just, well, let go of the perfectionism. Looking back at it, I'm like, okay, the sketchbook spread sort of makes sense, but it's certainly not my favourite one. I think this one here, for example, could need a little more sort of contrast and details. I probably should have used coloured pencils to make the shapes more defined, but that's okay. It's just one of the spreads, one of many, and there are many I like, and then there are a few that I do not particularly like, and that's fine, it's okay. So this page is really interesting because it's the only page where I did the same subject twice with different techniques. So this one is using only wax pastels, and then this one here is with gouache and a bit of coloured pencils to add some details on the flowers in the vase. I'm not quite sure which one I like best. I showed my mum and my brother, and they were both very clear on which one they preferred. They prefer this one here. Obviously I expected that, but I actually really like this wax pastel one because it's so super loose and it was so quick. Wow, it was just like done in a couple of minutes, which is very unusual for me because even in this small sized sketchbook it takes me quite some time to finish one spread, which is fine. We do not need to be in a rush for everything all of the time. Next one is really interesting because it's the only page that I feel is really sort of just experimented to see what kind of design I wanted to do on the plate that I painted last week, which was great. I'm so happy I prepared for this because I think I would have been so overwhelmed by all of the choices and possibilities, and I'm very glad I picked a colour palette and ornaments beforehand, and I think it just turned out very lovely. I'm still waiting to pick it up because I have to glaze it and burn it in a special oven. And next is a sketchbook spread that I'm not quite sure I like or do not like. These are two landscapes inspired by, again, photos that I'd found in my grandma's things, which was really helpful. The thing here is I liked doing these landscapes. It was very much fun. I used gouache and wax pastels and even a bit of coloured pencils. I really went into the mixed media technique here. In the end, when they were done and finished, I felt like they were, well, actually not finished. Again, it's an experiment, it's a process, and you're gonna have to be fine with that. Next one is very interesting because I really do not like this page, but I really like this one. So this one with the mushrooms was an experiment to see which colours I'd like to do, but then the background turned out sort of very messy and the frame doesn't stand out at all, so that's not really what I wanted it to look like. But okay, so I moved on to another page and tried to see which technique I like best. And first I did this coloured pencil pair here, and then I decided to do two more with gouache and then coloured pencils, which I definitely prefer to this one. I think this has sort of more texture to it, it's a little more interesting. The next page is one that I really like. Looking back, I have to say that I really enjoyed doing the page. Then I was kind of, I don't know, the shapes of these butterflies are kind of weird, and they kind of are. But at the same time, I really like this page because it's very fun and it has a lot of colours, and I like the frames that I painted around it. For this one, I used a biology book. I think it's super interesting to use different kinds of books and sources for inspiration. Next one is two flower vases. Again, I do not particularly like them, but it was rather fun and very quick to do. This one is a gouache and Posca pen painting, and this is only using gouache. Only using Posca pens, sorry. I do prefer this one here, not only because of the fact that it's with gouache and Posca pens, but also because of the shape of the vase. And honestly, I don't know, I'm not a huge fan of Posca pens, I have to say. I'm not quite sure I'm using them correctly. I'm maybe using them not the way you're supposed to, but I don't know, I'm not very comfortable using them, and I probably won't do a lot of Posca pen paintings in the future. This page is one of the few pages where I only used a black fine liner. I think it was a Pilot pen. I'm going to write this on the screen for you to see. And this was just when I was having tea with my mum in the living room. and I just really wanted to capture the moment. The next sketchbook spread is again inspired by photos that I found in my grandma's photo albums. These are two pictures that I really like, and I think they turned out quite well. I have to say I think I do prefer this one here, even though I prefer the colours here, but style wise I prefer this one because it's sort of more precise in my opinion. I used ink for this one, and this one is with wax pastel, so you can't be as precise obviously. But it's interesting because now I know what I prefer and what I'd go for next time I do this kind of landscape. The next sketchbook spread is very interesting because I finally did something else than only landscapes, flowers and, well, a couple of butterflies or something like that. Architecture is not something that I go for very often, but I really enjoyed doing this one. And then for the page next to it, I decided to go for a similar colour palette that this tower has to complete it. So I did these butterflies, which I'm not too happy about. I prefer the butterflies that I did a couple of pages before that. But it's okay, and I think the colour palette here just meshes rather well. And this page here is also one that is sort of, well, I do not really like this one here, but I really do like this tea kettle. For this one I was just thinking, okay, I'm going to do something very loose, just splash some colour, some gouache paint onto the page and see what I can do using coloured pencils to work out some shapes and details. But I do not really like the result of it. I think it's just the proportions, you know, I probably would have liked to add a vase or something, but I didn't have the space. That's why a smaller size sketchbook can also be limiting sometimes. And then on this side, I did this lovely tea kettle, which I really like. I really love the colour. It's so bright and bold, and also, but I kind of feel like there's something missing. Maybe I should have written something like tea time over here is what I'm thinking right now. I had to use very small sized brushes for this one here, which I hadn't used in a while. I really tried to use only one brush actually, a very sort of, well, it's not a large brush, but it's a rather, well, it's a medium sized brush, but very large compared to the size of the sketchbook and the size of the paintings that I did in here. So the last page is this one here, which I quite like. I really like the tea pot here. I really like the ornaments, like the little flowers on there. It is one that I found on a picture on Unsplash, which is a really great source for reference photos that I like to use on a regular basis. And very last page here are two more landscapes that are inspired by photos that I have from my grandma. Even though I don't particularly like them, I finished the sketchbook, and the very last, well, there is another, you could say, page, but it's just colour swatches, not very interesting. Anyways, so this was the sketchbook tour. I really hope you enjoyed it and could get some inspiration of it. I'm really happy I completed it, and it really got me into a flow for painting and drawing again, which is really lovely. I have, I believe, one more moleskin sketchbook somewhere, and so I think I'm going to continue with this one, although I also have another larger sized one at the moment that I'm using, and a very small sized, square sized one. And also because, you know, 2 sketchbooks are not enough, I also ordered a Nina Cosford sketchbook, which I also started, so that makes 3 sketchbooks, and if I start another one there'll be 4, which is kind of crazy. But I think it's also cool to have different sizes and different types of papers, so it will probably take me a while to complete one of these sketchbooks as I'm using them all at the same time. But yeah, anyways, I really hope you enjoyed the sketchbook tour, and I see you very soon. Bye bye!